You're not afraid of bills, you're afraid of looking at them. Because every digit laced with interest isn't just a debt, it's a distorted mirror of your shattered self-worth. That's why, even deep in debt, you run from money like it's a predator, not because of the pain of owing, but because of the shame of facing it. This video isn't about finance. It's about the anatomy of financial fear, about how I chose to pay every cent, not to be clean, but to destroy the phantom that kept me chained, even while my stomach twisted, my palms sweat, and my soul collapsed. You've heard the lie so many times it became gospel. Just budget better. Spend less than you earn. You lack financial education. But no one taught you that your fear of money is inherited, cultivated in silence, rooted in family trauma, social comparison, and humiliation disguised as advice. The system wants you to think your debt is your fault, that you're lazy, impulsive, weak. But what if you're not ignorant, just emotionally conditioned, programmed to feel disgust at money and a strange comfort in debt? Picture a child trembling at a paper lion. That's the emotional debtor. Avoids their bank app like it's a death sentence, freezes at overdraft alerts, forgets passwords, pretends everything's fine. I was that child. Paying off my debts wasn't responsibility. It was exorcism, an intimate confrontation with the invisible boogeyman that fed on my guilt. There's no pretending anymore. Collapse is everywhere, in the streets, in anxious faces, in the fake smiles of those hustling to survive. Fear has become a product. Apps, gurus, quick fix promises. But no one talks about the root, the ancient fear of money as pain, rejection, humiliation. We are all emotionally indebted, and anyone who denies it is lying. I lied too, for years. Thought earning more would solve it, worked harder, read the books, followed the coaches. But I only started healing when I faced my fear for what it was, a psychic construct, a symptom of internal war. I paid back every cent, with sweat, shame, and soul. And I discovered the debt was just the surface. The real hole was fear. And fear doesn't clear with spreadsheets. Fear of money doesn't begin with debt. It begins with glances. The look you got when you asked for something we couldn't afford right now. The cold silence around the dinner table when rent was late. The tired expression on your caretaker's face, pretending everything was fine. Each financial trauma is an invisible pixel in your worldview, forming a mental image where money is always missing, debt is always guilt, and wealth is a cruel joke played by others. They never taught this in school, but your body learned early. Thinking about money activates the same emotional circuitry as punishment. That's why you freeze, avoid, delay. Because your nervous system now links money to pain, not freedom. Then you grow up, and you repeat the script without noticing. You sabotage yourself silently, forget bills by accident, overlook opportunities, settle for less. And worse, you feel relief when paying interest because it confirms the emotional role your psyche was trained to play, the eternal debtor. No matter how much you earn, something inside will find a way to keep the scarcity cycle alive. Because debt has become part of your identity, and no one wants to lose the only identity they understand. You're not undisciplined. You're trapped in an emotional script where fear fuels the plot. Culture reinforces the loop. Movies, music, social media. The poor are always funny, creative, struggling, and somehow more authentic. Wealth becomes a caricature. Money becomes satire. And anyone trying to prosper with emotional awareness is labeled arrogant, naive, or sold out. But here's the brutal truth. Most people don't want to get rich, they want revenge on the system. So they stay trapped in debt, feeding a fear of money that feels righteous, but is actually self-destructive. Because hating money creates a false sense of moral superiority. But it's still fear, and fear charges interest. You don't free yourself from debt by paying bills. You free yourself by dismantling the emotional machinery behind the avoidance. As long as money remains a symbol of pain, it will be your enemy. And enemies don't bring peace, they bring war. I stopped fighting money only when I started speaking to it, like someone confronting a trauma, like someone visiting the grave of their childhood. Money isn't paper, It's a mirror. And like every mirror, it doesn't show you what you want. It shows you what you're hiding. That's why so many people fear it. It's not the negative balance that scares them. It's what that balance reflects about their sense of worth. Money doesn't lie. It screams in silence, echoes from your childhood, your unmet needs, the comparison games you lost, the shame you swallowed. So instead of treating money as an ally, you turn it into a monster. You pretend you don't care. You romanticize struggle. You glorify lack as if it were virtue. But deep down, you're terrified of seeing the reflection of a self-worth built on scarcity, not sovereignty. The system knows this, and it feeds the illusion expertly. It turns money into judgment, into competition, into shame. If you have it, you're greedy. If you don't, you're lazy. If you want it, you're dangerous. And caught between these caricatures, you choose the safest path. Denial. You reject money before it can reject you, like someone ending a relationship before they're abandoned, like someone burning the letter before reading the truth. It's an ancient, primal defense. You learned to distance yourself from money to avoid pain. But that distance only deepens the loneliness, and every dollar you earn feels like a visitor that won't stay. Worse, money has become proof of social value, a performance. You don't spend to solve. You spend to belong, to not look poor, to fake security, to stage happiness. And in doing so, you create a debt that isn't just financial. It's symbolic. A debt to the character you built just to survive the theater of modern life. That's why, when I started paying off my debts, it hurt more than it helped. Every payment felt like a funeral for the persona I wore for decades. Facing money required more courage than facing creditors. In the end, money isn't about economics, it's about memory, about what it awakens in you, and what you're willing to feel in order to break free. You're not afraid of the invoice, you're afraid of the mirror. And as long as you reject that reflection, you'll stay at war with the one thing that could actually set you free. The truth about who you became to survive. The biggest debt isn't in your bank, it's in your body. You owe yourself years of denied courage, swallowed boundaries, postponed truths. You owe presence. You owe honesty. You owe rupture. And every overdue bill is just a physical manifestation of an invisible bankruptcy. That's why paying doesn't bring relief, it stings. It stings because it reminds you how often you betrayed yourself, how many times you said yes when you meant no, how often you smiled while being devoured. You think you're paying the bank, but you're really paying fear, paying your past, paying to keep betraying yourself just with a better disguise. Then comes the addiction. The more you pay, the more you spend, because the system trained you not to transform but to soothe. You don't spend out of need, you spend because the taste of stability terrifies you. That's when fear shapeshifts. Just when you begin to rise, it whispers, "This isn't safe," it tempts you back. Tells you you're more lovable as a struggler, more relatable as a wreck, more acceptable as a victim. Emotional debt behaves like a toxic relationship. The moment you try to leave, it disguises itself as comfort. Little justifications, small indulgences, deserved rewards, and soon you're back in the cage on with more guilt because you should have known better. The cycle continues because you haven't forgiven yourself. Paying off financial debt is easy. The hard part is facing the version of yourself built around lack. The one who clung to, "I can't, I'm not enough, I'll never have." That part still lives inside you, and until it's named, heard, integrated, it will sabotage every effort to rise. Spreadsheets mean nothing if you still feel ashamed of wanting more. Extra income means nothing if you still believe wealth is ugly. Negotiated interest means nothing if, deep down, you believe you deserve to pay the full price for your pain. That's where I found myself. Not as a debtor, but as a co-conspirator. Someone who fed their own emotional captivity because freedom felt too unfamiliar. Paying off my debts became a mourning process, a symbolic burial of the version of me who believed peace was too dangerous to live. Money didn't disappear, but its voice changed. It no longer screams, judges, or chokes me. Now, it whispers. It speaks in another tongue, and only those who stop running can hear it. After I paid off my debts, the financial ones and the emotional ones, I realized money wasn't a villain or a savior. It was a mirror of presence, a silent oracle showing me with brutal precision where my energy was leaking, where I said yes but meant please don't, where I spent to numb, where I earned to overcompensate, and finally, where I began to use money as an extension of clarity, not confusion. The fear still visits. But now it's different. It doesn't paralyze. It teaches. It shows up as a guardian at the edge of my growth, reminding me I'm entering places I've never mapped. But now, I don't run. I listen. When fear appears, I investigate. I don't self-sabotage. Because I understand that every emotional reaction to money is a clue, a breadcrumb trail to deeper truths. Echoes of unhealed stories asking to be felt, not repeated. And that only becomes possible when you refuse to keep dancing the poverty script and instead build a new narrative from within, one rooted in worth, not wounds. That's when I saw it. True wealth doesn't start with accumulation. It starts with courage. Courage to admit you fear success, that you fear being seen, that you fear becoming fully responsible for your own life. And while that fear runs the show, you can pay every debt and still live enslaved. Because freedom isn't about the absence of bills, it's about presence, the ability to stand in front of money and not flinch. Today, I spend differently, less from anxiety, more from alignment. I spend to build, not to hide. And when money leaves, it no longer drags my self-worth with it, because now it knows it can return, and it will be welcomed, not worshipped, not feared, because it was never about what comes in or goes out. It's about who you are when money knocks on your door. There comes a moment when the debt turns to dust, not because the balance is zero, but because the bond is broken. You look at the cleared account and feel something unfamiliar, not relief. Silence. A heavy, ancient silence like a version of you just died. And it did. The emotional debtor is gone. The one who clung to scarcity like a surname. The one who needed debt as an excuse to stay small. The one who used fear to belong. That part no longer commands, no longer speaks, no longer decides for you. What remains is a strange emptiness, an internal space that can, for the first time, be filled by something that doesn't run, doesn't fake, doesn't numb. A full presence, but beware, the system will try to recall you. It will disguise new debts as necessities, offer comfort through collapse, whisper that you're safer in struggle. It prefers you that way, more obedient when anxious, more predictable when broke, more profitable when scared. The world loves emotional debtors because they overwork, undercharge, and buy anything that helps them forget. That's why paying off debt isn't a happy ending. It's the beginning of a harder war, the war to stay awake in a world that monetizes your emotional sleep. You'll relapse. You'll want to spend to feel, to silence, to disappear. That's okay. But now you know. And knowing changes everything. Because now, every time you face a price, you'll remember. The real cost isn't the number. It's who you have to become to face it with open eyes. Money is now a tool, and you finally are no longer a fugitive. You're a builder. If you made it this far, you're no longer the same. And maybe now it's time for the final rite. Say goodbye, truly, to the character that consumed your peace for debts that were never really yours. Today you return what was never yours to carry, the guilt, the fear, the shame, and you begin a new pact, not with money, with yourself.